Hello and welcome to another episode of Ahead of the Curve. Today I have Heather Gallagher on the show with me. Heather, welcome to the show.
Hi, Geoffrey. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation to join.
You know what? I've been saying welcome to the show. I really should be saying welcome to the conversation. As I mentioned before, I'm trying to stray away from that, but I just can't get away from the word show. It's just too easy.
You know, but now that we're all our own Zoom stars, every day is a show, you know?
Yeah, it's true. It's pretty true, actually. I kind of like the filter you've got going on your camera as well.
I keep these on for every single call and meeting and appearance that I have. It makes me happy. It makes other people happy. And this technology exists. Like, why doesn't everybody have sparkles? You know, sparkles for the people.
I did a few shows a few times back where I was using SnapCam to use the filters, the overlays, and it's really, really interesting and pretty powerful. But I had a time where I was just having way too much fun, and they had an effect that was like an eggplant storm. So I had eggplants falling off of me and bouncing off my shoulders, which was definitely a memorable time for a few people. And yeah, it was kind of crazy. Kind of went a little overboard with the filters.
Admittedly, it can be a little disruptive, but you know, I've been working in the augmented reality industry, so me and my previous company, you know, like this was just professional research and almost an obligation. And our CEO would run meetings with, you know, giant crazy virtual wigs on, and you know, but we're in the biz, you know, we got to do it.
Why not? Of course.
That's me giving you permission. That's me giving you permission.
So Heather, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of where you started and how you got into Burning Man and kind of the journey that you've taken so far?
Sure. I'll try and keep it the short version. You might not know it by looking at me right now, but I came through the very traditional East Coast corporate world and did a decade of master's degree in computer science. And I spent a decade in doing consulting for corporate telcos, actually, mostly, and some integration work. So that was 3-letter acronym, global service companies. I used to wear a suit and pantyhose.
I think we know most of those 3-letter acronyms.
Yeah, and then moved west and discovered Burning Man, and realized, what was I doing with my days? You know, beige cubicles, beige pants, and you realize you're helping big companies just kind of scrape pennies from the masses, and like, there's got to be more. And to ask about how I got into so my name's Heather Gallagher. I started as a traditional technologist, and then I went on to be the head of technology for Burning Man for about 17 years. And then in the last year, plus some change, I've been working in immersive augmented reality, just to catch everybody up. So I ended up joining Burning Man. You know, I went to it and was like, oh, my people, my place. You know, like stepping into frame on your life, and having been surrounded by creative people even before I found that community. You know, some of my original musical friends said, always surround yourself with the most creative human beings you can. You know, I just instinctively, like, I'm with the band or the one in the costume. Like, that's always where the really interesting experiences and people are. And so once I discovered Burning Man, I went in whole hog, and I volunteered. That's how I ended up getting the position. I was volunteering as a photographer. That's why you'll see my handle. People in Burning Man call me Camera Girl, because my first job was sort of as an internal photographer and taking pictures at the event and behind the scenes and things that were happening year round and kind of the story behind the event. And nobody had really done that. That was the beginning of really the beginning of digital photography. There was no Facebook, there was no Flickr, there was none of that. It was literally the first couple generations of digital cameras. And so I was doing that sort of as fun and sort of to get away from my traditional, you know, corporate job, and then kept holding on and kept volunteering. And eventually, as some things moved in the organization, I had made a relationship, and then I started running technology for them.
So was that your very first experience with Burning Man? Like, you'd never gone to the event as a burner before? It was.
Oh no, no. I went once. I went once as a participant, and then when I came back, that was in 2000. And when I came back in 2001, I've now been working as a photographer for the Center Camp Cafe. That's the giant structure that's sort of at the heart of the city, kind of a town hall area. And so starting from year 2 and every year since then until this year with COVID, I was out there for a month every year, helping to produce the event in one way or another, for a couple of years as a photographer, and then for many, many years running the technology. So this was an interesting year to not go to the desert for a month at all.
I would say that there are pros and cons to that at the same time, right? Like,
yeah,
you're not coming out a week later coughing up sand and dust.
There was a lot less laundry, a lot less.
Or cleaning off vehicles, or just throwing them out, or just disposable items.
Yes.
A lot less disposable items.
Yeah.
So I just want to say hi to Priscilla and Christy. Christy, thank you again so much for everything that you've done. And I also want to say hello to one more sponsor who have also been helping us promote the show. It's been awesome. So Heather, can you tell us a little bit about, how you've already kind of mentioned, of course, how you got involved with Burning Man, but, how did that transition happen as you kind of merged into the position that you had while you were there?
It was interesting because I was volunteering and doing things like photo editing the website, and I was doing things that just were interesting to me and that I loved, but that were sort of scratching my creative itch outside of my corporate job. And then as I was volunteering for the technology teams and learning things there, it turned out, I was qualified, to help lead in that capacity. But it wasn't a clear step, it was kind of like I'm doing stuff for fun. But then as I kept edging closer to things that were more relevant to my experience, of course, it's all now my experience, I kind of was persistent. Honestly, I kept sort of knocking on the door of a couple of people and being like, hey, I'm here, I'm interested, I'm available. Here's my big fat resume. Actually, this is crazy. I created this huge scroll photo this is the kind of Scorpio crazy I am, Geoffrey. I created this huge scroll photo collage of all the different ways I contributed to the community, little tiles over like a timeline and photo galleries and projects. And I printed it out on a photo printer and I delivered it with my resume. Now this was on a scroll of paper that wasn't even designed to go through this style of printer, but I had like propped it up with like books and clips. And I have you ever done
creative?
So I'm crazy and creative. But it was sort of a form of storytelling, and it was something that I wanted to do to supplement and to help understand people understand my commitment and to demonstrate, what I was doing for the community and intended to do, and to just kind of stand above the rest, because there's a lot of people who are interested in doing things. I don't know if that exact piece worked, but just being around and being a part of conversations and having established a reputation, and being somebody that they already trusted was very helpful. And so actually I was traveling and I got an email that said, just what do you want to do around here? And I'm in China. And I was like, I'm going to learn a certain programming language and take over so-and-so's job. And then they said, well, be careful what you ask for. We want to talk with you when you come back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was a relationship that was built over years, and persistence and a little bit of creative craziness thrown in.
I think we all need to have a little bit of creative craziness. Like that's just kind of like part of what you need to have. You have to be a little bit insane in general to be inside of this industry, like inside of tech, inside of creative technologies, inside of just about anything creative. You got to be a little tiny bit loopy upstairs to kind of crank out things that we do.
Well, the interesting thing is, sometimes in the traditional world I came out of, with suits and the corporate, the purple sparkles, right? Or the colors on your resume or whatever were for verboten. You didn't do things like that.
No, of course. Everything was trim and proper.
Yeah. And then there's that moment where you're like, and shifting the Burning Man and doing things like that was like, if they don't want me and my purple sparkles, and these days I'm like, dreadlocks are coming to whatever the gig is, then I don't want to be there either, so it's fine if some people are not comfortable with it, but the places I want to be need to be places where people, can be really comfortable and accepting and thriving on somebody's harmless, fun creativity,
So let's talk about a little bit about like the tech side and how you how the evolution, I guess, of Burning Man kind of happened over the course of the time that you were there. I'd love to hear maybe a story or, you know, past experience that you remember from some of the times that you were working there at Burning Man. You know, maybe some highlights of times where things kind of changed or evolved, or, you know, anything along those lines. Does anything come to mind?
I mean, there's so many stories. I mean, you know, the arc of it, I mean, you know, literally when I sort of took helm of the technology, you know, there was under 10 technology paid staff. It was a bunch of open source hackers who, bless their hearts, you know, and some early pioneers in the internet who had done the very first Burning Man websites. And they were now just sort of, you know, as advisors once in a while, bless their hearts. And
well, I was going to say, actually, sorry, I was going to say, going back 17 years, I mean, you're really kind of transitioning out from basically, I mean, that was kind of the, as you were mentioning, the earlier days of the internet. We're kind of going from like AIM, and we're going from like bulletin board services, kind of moving over to more centralized internet. I remember actually hosting my own bulletin board service with my brother.
Yeah.
And all those times listening to modems ringing along and trying to connect to these different hot bulletin board services. Or
I think we were a little bit past the dial-up modem, but maybe not entirely. Yeah, so, you know, the website, there was one website, it was flat HTML, you know, this might even have been before CSS, and the volunteers were, you know, a distributed authoring team of folks who, as changes came in from the, you know, from the organization, or as things need to get said, those people would voluntarily take their time and make changes to the web pages and push it through the change control. And every single photo, you know, I was doing a lot of the photo processing, and there was some collaboration tools that were done on a platform called Plone, which was an old open source project that was well intended, but more for the engineers than for the humans. You know, and at the event site, there was one location that had internet, and that was a bit of a dial-up, you know, T1, you know, point-to-point super sketch, and that was for the box office to be able to sell tickets, right?
That makes sense.
You know, and then
you got to get people there, right?
Yeah, and at that point you could still sell tickets at the gate, so you also needed to, like, you know, sell them tickets, like, you know. And so then, just for comparison, I'll come back to maybe some interesting stories. So for comparison, you know, you know, it grows alongside you and you're in it and you're just tackling the next problem. Or with technology, you're always just, you know, you're tending to a piece of the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. What needs to be replaced now, what needs to be plugged in, what needs to be integrated, what thing is no longer being supported. You know, I mean, it's just this living amorphic thing when you're doing technology, you know, at that level, or as it grows, because there's always something, you know, whack-a-mole. There's always something that needs to be pruned, fixed, replaced, upgraded. And it's just all about what you know, making the decisions about what you can do. And then, you know, you're like, okay, now we're in meetings. Yeah. And then you know that there's important things going on because it means so much to you, but you know, the whole time you're just in service and realizing, you know, it's just you've been solving problems and bigger problems and different problems. And then as I left, it's like, okay, we went from one website to literally 46 unique websites, and they've probably launched another 4 or 5 this year, each of which is now hosted on, you know, using the tool WordPress, with a very beautiful distributed authoring and publishing system that my previous team made, so that the content people could make their updates and do some other things without breaking the rest of the website. And you know, integrated gallery tools, you know, the central login with your burner profile to try to make it easier for people, so that we're not we weren't asking for the same data over and over and over and over and over again. You know, from you know, we had 40 different software vendors when I left, you know, and then in the event site, we then had 72-ish on BlackRock City locations that needed something, and that would be either custom software, out-of-the-box software, internet connectivity, equipment, tech support, printers, you know, so So there's an arc and scale, right? From one website to 46, and from maybe one location in the desert that needed internet to 72.
And that's quite a big scale, to say the very least.
Yeah, it was cool. And a few pivotal moments was the big switch from, going into like WordPress websites and then switching to nonprofits. So then rebuilding and redesigning and relaunching and coming out into a new, into the burningman.org was big. It took us a long time to get into a graphical newsletter. That was a several year conversation. And also, there is also a fair amount of Salesforce that was implemented, and there was a lot of resistance to that.
Well, Burning Man grew. It went from a pretty small event out in the middle of nowhere to this monstrosity over years.
Yeah, and there was a lot of resistance to some of these sort of big name tech because it's definitely more an open source culture. But as a technologist, I had to say, I appreciate that. Here's what it takes. There's no such thing as free software, by the way, because you have to support it, maintain it, update it, feed it. You have to feed it for eternity. And
trust me, working in that industry right now, I totally get it.
And when you need world-class functionality or world-class scalability or world-class security as a little event company or a nonprofit, you have to have, I've did these decisions with other, technology advisors and volunteers and friends, and we'd walk through the whole thing of, gosh, we wish we could take this risk, but knowing that there is 250,000 or 500,000 people or more who are going to come hammering on this thing or are going to have an opinion about it or who are going to be let down if it doesn't work the way they expect, the internet to work these days, then you have to go for what ends up being more conservative choices, Anyway, so, and one of my, before I left, obviously it was a big deal to leave, but, one of the legacies I, left behind was a big call to action about really embracing technology and showing up for the trainings and, not being quite so timid with all the tools. And even though it was a cultural company, it needed to start acting a bit more like a tech company. We're not a tech company. I was like, you don't have to be a tech company, but you have to be on the scale of this to this. We have to be a lot closer to being a tech company. And I wrote a strategy and documents and staffing plans and really laid the foundation for what needed to happen. And then a year later, COVID happened. and everyone was like,
I think that's like the headline of 2020. COVID happened.
And then the whole organization and the whole community and the whole event then catapulted into some very, front-leading technologies. And everyone was like, you called it.
I was gonna say them, kind of going back and saying we're not a tech company to all of a sudden, hey, we're a tech company. We got to figure this out.
To which I say anybody who's in business in 2020, 2015, has to be a tech company. Like literally, the good news is a lot of the tech in some ways has gotten easier to use, blogs and websites and all of that.
Faster, things have gotten easier. I mean, absolutely. I maintain our own website through WordPress, which is super easy these days. There's plugins for everything.
But when you're coordinating and supporting and fostering a community of people all around the world, that becomes you have much greater considerations for data handling and usability and all of that. And plus half of them have fake names and 47 email addresses and the same problems.
Aliases for days.
I did also think that some of the next leadership might come from gaming. I said, well, let's see, who's got experience managing a global community of weirdos with fake names? I was like, oh, gamers. And they figured out a lot of
groups. You got to go and get hacking groups.
Yeah,
hacking groups would be ideal. Just get a hacking group.
Oh yeah. We had some of those friends on the inside too. Anyway, pivotal moments there were growth and/or having to make the decisions to adopt something that maybe felt a bit more enterprise, but having to recognize you have enterprise needs, and then the catapult, of the entire organization into the digital realm has been fascinating. So I've been cheerleading along the way.
Well, I imagine as well, 17 years ago, everything that was built out there was kind of more conventional, evolving into stuff that's coming in more digitally, and people looking for more power and more power support, more, as you mentioned, more connectivity, starting to set up these huge projectors in the middle of the desert, start projection mapping things and bringing in millions and millions of lighting fixtures and little light nodes, and, really starting to dig into the technical, well, not the technical, but the more visual, like digital video and visual digital age. I can imagine that there was everything just kind of went out of proportion exponentially. So I remember there was people that were going out there, like a month in advance to kind of stake out their position, their place, and start building.
Well, so you have to also remember that, and my hat is off to all the creative and technology folks and the Go AV Club, for every one of those camps and projects, because each of those is its own just magnificent glory, or failure in itself. And our job was to maintain for the infrastructure, right, for the container, so that those things would happen. But when it came to power and things, they had to be self-sufficient, and the organization did not give internet to the participants because it's a scarce commodity. It's a rural Nevada,
desert, middle of nowhere.
Bandwidth is not cheap. It takes many internet relays and towers and dishes and an entire team of humans to make it so that Black Rock City can run safely. And the priority's got to be the hospital and infrastructure and things like that. And then some of the groups would come collaborate with us, and they'd kind of get access to the network as long as they used various config files and played by certain rules. And they did their own setup. And then we always had the ability, if we needed to, the agreement was you can come play and share the backbone pipe, if you will. But if we need to, we're going to shut you off. Well, you have to. If somebody, because internet traffic can get weird, right?
Oh yeah, trust, yeah.
Breaking video,
weird, it can get crazy.
And if somebody has got the wrong configuration in their thing that they're trying to do, and it's pegging your bandwidth for the entire city, you have to make priority decisions. And obviously, people's safety and the infrastructure of the event is always going to be the highest priority.
Yeah,
those folks did amazing things, but they had to be almost entirely self-sufficient. That it's not, bring your sets with you, bring your programs with you, don't expect to get on the internet out there. And then they're still pulling off some of the best productions that you've ever seen,
Yeah, it's quite incredible. It's quite incredible the things that came out of there year after year, seeing just some of these huge spectacles, being created and experiences being created out in the middle of nowhere was quite phenomenal. And all the infrastructure that was put into place, the building of these huge structures and statues and all this crazy stuff you'd never expect to see in the middle of the desert, just show up and be there. So
it's one of my favorite things. Still is. We're still family.
So I see that you've been migrating into the world of AR and VR and extended reality and a lot of stuff that we've been speaking about on the show this year, because it's kind of been the hot thing and kind of the main source for a lot of people's income these days. As you were moving, kind of transitioning, of course, digitally this year, maybe you could talk or tell us a little bit about, the involvement that you had this year and the transition of Burning Man going digital.
Sure. I'll also first start by saying that, when I left Burning Man, I looked out and I said, what on earth could be as interesting as this, right? These lights and lasers and spectacle and giant sculptures and so much wonderful human creativity and mixed realities, augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality, whatever you want to call it, creative technology, things used for productions and entertainment. as well as some transformative technologies, for wellness and personal well-being. Those are the only areas that were even remotely interesting to me. And especially the immersive technologies and virtual realities and augmented realities, because I've done keynotes on this, that this is literally the new uncharted canvas for humans to play in, right? I mean, much like the Black Rock City desert, or the Black Rock's desert, or the internet was. For some people, they've been doing this now for a decade, but for the most people, it's still just coming into the common, the awareness of the common person. And so when I said what would be interesting is Burning Man, I looked out and I said, this mixed reality, I mean, we get to make a whole new dimension out of light and holograms and 3D worlds, and and it's uncharted, and they're still ungoverned in certain ways. It's the Wild West. And so I thought, okay, I want to go do that. I want to go play there.
Wild West, I'm in.
Yeah, Wild West, blinky lights. Come on, any questions? Yeah, so that's a little bit about how, and I definitely wanted to do something interesting and awe-inspiring with my time. And then, lo and behold, 2020 happened, and Burning Man had to, make the decisions about what to do or not to do. And my hat is off to. They had 10 different platforms, 9 or 10, depending on what things you count and which ones actually happened. And Burning Man took the approach, which is a way that the organization has approached lots of challenges, which is let's see what surfaces from the community, right? So much of the content of the event. And after a lot of relationship building and conversationing, these 9 or 10 platforms emerged, these multiverses emerged. And rather than just pick one and kind of name that as like the thing, they enabled these 10 different things to be their own thing, which is both crazy and genius, right?
And yeah,
if
you're going to dive into the fire, you might as well pour as much gasoline as you possibly can onto it, toss the match, and just leap.
Yeah, and if you're going to do a hard thing once, you might as well do a hard thing 10 different ways once.
Yeah, why not?
Have people do. But it also gives if different people could rally a team around each of these platforms and pull it off, then you might, great, enable that, right? Like, it's their art, right? This is now the birth of a new kind of Burning Man digital art in ways that people, a whole new version of creativity is now sprung out of the side of this thing.
Well, the other thing too is the one thing that I've loved about talking about digital art, virtual reality, and these metaverses and the metaverse itself as a whole is that you can really, you can build whatever you want. There is no limitations to physics. There's no limitations to anything. You can just create and build, and you can create these enormous, crazy environments and worlds that you just can't do in real life.
Yeah. I mean, even the coolest Burning Man sculpture still has gravity. Yeah, that's proven over and over again. So my role this year was literally cheerleader. Apparently I had some foresight that this was coming, and I got into the industry. That's why I'm saying my virtual hat is off to those every single team that worked on the platforms, and then the artists and the people who showed up and contributed. So I made it my mission to really cheerlead, to dive deeply and to go on sort of a safari of these different platforms, and to tell people about them and to encourage people into it. It's a very new thing for a lot of folks, and I'm continuing to invite people into some of the platforms. Come on, I'll meet you there. We can go to Burning Man, literally tonight. we can fly. And so I can't take any credit for what was accomplished this year, other than, hopefully, helping some people understand what's possible. I did get invited to many of the platforms early, just
a little preview to kind of give a little feedback and input.
Knowing people, having been the head of technology for the organization, working in mixed reality. I mean, come on, it was basically like a convention for my entire professional career that just happened. So I just made it my point to sort of support those folks and to check it out, and also to kind of whisper into a few friends, ears, and who are still in the organization, of like, well, here's what I would do, and and kind of give some advice and some encouragement, and just check in with some of the teams about how they were going. Yeah, so I can't take credit other than I participated the heck out of this year, and I salute all the folks who did it, because I know what a tremendous amount of work it is. We were joking, a few of us who have produced Burning Man for decades, and there's been a bit of a stigma, or some people like to say, oh, all these tech people go to Burning Man to play, da da da, and there, of course they do, but we're saying, we've sort of flipped things on its edge, right? For years, the Burning Man staff produced Burning Man so the tech folks could play, and this time folks produced 10 Burning Mans so the Burning Man staff could play. Yeah, we're like, oh, well, this is great. They built Black Rock City, and now we just get to show up. So thanks for that.
It's always fun when things get upended, right? The tables turn.
Yeah, you just got to see the humor in it, but and then now there's some folks who are crossing over. I have had multiple conversations with people who now have gotten the bug, right? They've gotten the taste of 3D creation, or these virtual worlds, or throwing an event there. And people have come up to me and said, oh, the things that I do in real life, producing events, producing things for humans, right? Producing, worrying about flow of traffic and the location of, things, and how humans are all going to occupy a space together or create together. So much of that applies now to some of these technologies, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And there's, you can throw a lot of that out the window.
Well, and there might be, and that's what I'm finding now as I'm figuring out what my, next adventure is going to be, and what I'm going to play with next, is, even though I've got a master's degree in computer science and 30 years of technology and done the infrastructure thing, a lot of the value is really just my ability to understand the humanity and how it intersects with now these immersive 3D, technologies and experiences. You need, like, understanding both sides of the coin, understanding the technology, like what's really happening here, with camera vision and sensors and 3Ds and 6 degrees of field, and then what's really happening with the humans, and then what are you trying to accomplish? It's now more relevant than ever. The real world things are applicable, and sometimes people might be better at the coding, right? I was an engineer forever, but not every engineer is good with the people stuff or the spatial stuff.
Absolutely.
And so the hybrid of we need coding, but then sometimes people have the toys, but they don't know what to do with it, and other people know what to do with the toys, but they don't know exactly how to make all the syntax work.
Well, it takes a team to create something great, right? You need to have the right people in the right places, and you need to really understand how things work, both on the human side and on the technical side, to really create something amazing. And you can't do it alone. It's very, very few people that I know are capable of being able to do, use both sides of their brain, the entirely creative side to create this amazing environment and this amazing story, and then also have the technical know-how to build it and create it themselves. There's just so few and far people that are capable of being able to do that. And
I'm rolling my eyes a little because I do that. But I mean, that doesn't mean I can claim complete mastery of all of the things, nor do you want to. It's better and more fun to work with other people. Even if you're just bantering, it becomes like jazz. Literally.
About even these conversations, a lot of time just go brainstorming, and often to the wild blue yonder about ideas and different ways of doing things. And it's been really cool having all kinds of different people kind of week after week on this platform talking about all kinds of different things, and just coming up with different ideas and speaking about different ways of even doing the same thing. And it's been really, it's really cool to have that feedback and that input as a community. And it's just so important, so important to have.
So much that's possible right now. I mean, technology now, 30 years after I, sort of finished my formal training on it, is really getting interesting. A lot of us who have been sort of lifetime geeks, we are so inspired by things like that we saw in the movies or, all the science fiction. Mm-hmm. And now like this stuff is possible. Like finally we're getting the good stuff, and the tools are becoming easy to use. And what we can do with it. I mean, literally so many things the possibilities are limitless. The ability for people now to be live volumetric captured, for their performances, and then
that's going to get even crazier now.
Oh yeah, and then broadcast on the televisions or into the palm of your hand, or they're filming entire television shows, in LED sets, mm-hmm. giant cave. That's where they're creating. I mean, we can get into some like avatars and multiple dimension things.
I mean, Mandalorian.
Exactly. That's exactly the one. The making of that. I just watched that over and over. Kind of drooling with envy at the toys and and so you think about it. So we have a world. They've created a virtual world, and then you can visit a virtual world both as an avatar or a flat screen. Or then they take a virtual world and then they project it into the real world, and then they film another fake world within. I mean, we're getting into a lot of layers of existential.
We're getting into the Matrix, where you can have multiple worlds all within one.
Yeah. I in one of the Burning Man platforms, I had gone on in my VR headset because you can fly, and why not? You have one. But then I was inviting other people for my birthday a couple of weeks ago to come have a party there, and I said, well, let me see what the 2D, let me see what the laptop experience is like. So I created another avatar. So. And then there's this moment when my headset is on downstairs and my laptop is on upstairs, and I've got my purple me and I've got my blue me, and I keep switching back and forth, and I'm looking at it, and I'm taking selfies of me and my other avatar, and I was like, man, stuff is getting weird.
Stuff is getting trippy.
Stuff is getting weird. I was cracking myself up.
I have to tell Isabel that Matrix Reloaded was one of my favorite ones. So I would say, yeah, this is like the Matrix Reloaded.
Yeah, I mean the rabbit holes, the technological layers, and even creating virtual realities, and there's philosophies that I've studied, where it believes we are an avatar of some sort of potentiality. So then we're avatars creating avatars, and then having them all, and what's projection, what's real. That's conversation for another time, but it can get really interesting, and there's a responsibility too, right? And
yeah, there is responsibility, and there's there's also that human side of comfort level to all of that too, right? Some people don't want to show their true self. I like to look at it as the references as like Ready Player One. Mm-hmm. I think Ernest was onto something when he was kind of showing these people living in a world as an avatar or persona of who they want to be, as opposed to who they are inside of the human life. And that's really kind of an interesting concept when you really look at it, because there's just so many people that aren't really kind of comfortable with who they are, and they want to be somebody else, or they feel like they need to be something else than who they are, which is I've always found kind of interesting to kind of look at that kind of in that parallel universe of who you are and what you want to be.
Absolutely. I mean, I do wish I could have purple sparkles follow me everywhere in real life. I can't. And also, but the technology can, in addition to, of course, my avatars, I make them cute because, that's what keeps me entertained. But these immersive technologies in virtual worlds and games can also provide a place to discover yourself. I'm going to tangent off of the Burning Man, thing I'm an advisor for a group called Andromeda Entertainment. They do self-care game publishing. And a former staff member of theirs had gained some notoriety in the world because he became that guy who lost like 80 pounds playing VR games.
What?
Yeah, and a beautiful soul. And so he was, and they have a game I played at lunchtime called Audio Trip, super fun, and has been keeping me sane, during this whole pandemic, but he was, helping them develop this game, and it was created by choreographers and fun music, and it was a little more interesting than just the Beat Saber, where stuff's flying at you. It's flow. It was helping you get into flow state, and so by him testing this game, like a couple of hours each day, or at least an hour every day. And he was kind of a bigger, he had some little heft to him. He's a little round guy. And he knew it. He had been like 300 pounds, right? Or something like that. So he'd been, overweight. And doing this, joyfully doing this, and then dancing for an hour every day, he lost like 80 or up to 100 pounds. But what was really poetic, I met him at a summit, and it was sort of one of those, gathering things, and there was a dance in the middle of it, and we were all dancing, and he was sweating and spinning around the dance floor and just owning it.
That's awesome.
You know what? He came up to me and he said, "This is the first time I've ever danced with real people."
Really?
And if that doesn't get you, it gets me, right? And so yeah, so literally had been practicing his embodiment and getting comfortable with movement and learning how to be a new kind of person, and practicing that in a game, in an immersive environment, and then was able to bust through that and step into a version of himself. I just love that story.
Yeah, that's a tremendous story. I think that's a fabulous way to kind of illustrate, again, kind of breaking out who you are to what you want to be, and doing the stuff that you're really passionate about. There's just so much behind that in general. Like, I think it just goes so much deeper than a lot of people even truly know. I think it's one of the biggest and best pieces of advice we've been giving everybody, is to just dive into your passions, and not be afraid, and do what you really truly love to do, because that's where you shine. You always truly shine when you're doing something that you're passionate about and that you love. And it's really sad to see so many people not in positions or not doing things, just to be able to live day by day doing things that they don't necessarily want to do. So I would just say, always follow those dreams, no matter where you are, no matter how crappy it is, or whatever job you're stuck in. Keep that passion on the side and keep on running with it.
Well,
confidence and boosting and self-discovery. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I started working at Burning Man, I planted seeds in a lot of fields. I was a costume designer, I was a photographer, I was a technologist. Did I say photographer?
Yes.
Thank you, probably, right?
Say it again though. Double photographer.
And these things that were sort of disparate, right? And like different things that I love to do but didn't necessarily make sense together. And then when I got this position, it all swirls together sometime like soft serve ice cream, right? So there I was working on photography, for Burning Man. I was doing a lot of that as volunteer, but then I was also producing the print calendar for them for almost 20 years. And my technology aspect, and then I'm a costumed Halloween baby, like all of those things, some of which were just what I liked, and some of it were also what I knew and studied. They swirled together for like the next level up. And so you have to feed these other dimensions of yourself, and even if they don't seem like they have anything to do with each other, like there might be that moment when they all just combine to be like the next level up, the next level up. One of the things I realized with my last project, and I loved it, immersive augmented reality, and we were doing a lot of things for events and consumer entertainment. A company called N-Clue brought some cutting edge immersive consumer entertainment to the heart of San Francisco and to some many large events, and then COVID. But is honestly the side of doing that, the designing these experiences and producing them and hosting them and supporting them and creating content. For literally the first 6 months, of the job, I kept saying, "When do you want me to start working?" But yeah, I mean, I'm showing up to things and I'm making things happen and I'm helping to design experiences and I'm telling people where to move things around and nudging this and testing that and illustrating, you know, where the booth needs to go. And I'm just like, when do you want me to start working? Yeah, and that's when you know you're in your sweet spot, right? And that's
Absolutely.
what I had.
When you don't even realize that
Yeah.
you're doing what you're supposed to be doing when you're there.
That's what I had to learn was it doesn't always have to be hard. It doesn't have to, you know, yes, there's going to be meetings. Yes, there's going to be paperwork, but, you know, to just kind of keep leaning into the parts that you feel almost effortless, because that's how you know you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And, you know, I'm saying that to myself as much as anybody.
I think it's really important. It's really important that you do keep that motivation going forward. I mean, Priscilla, I've known Priscilla for years and years and years. Hey, Priscilla, honey, she said, keep moving, keep forward movement towards your dreams. Embody the sea turtle spirit, slow and steady. And I couldn't agree with you anymore. Actually, I don't know if I could flex high enough, but I got a great big sea turtle on my ankle. See it, Bill?
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
I don't have any tattoos. Oh my gosh, you're one of those hidden freaks, aren't you?
Yep, one of the hidden ones. Well, Heather, I wanted to thank you very much for kind of getting up to our time, but I wanted to thank you so much for coming on with me today. It's been a wonderful conversation. I've really enjoyed it. For those of you who want to get in touch with Heather, she's definitely very prominent on both Instagram and LinkedIn. So her LinkedIn profile is basically LinkedIn. You can look up her name, Heather Gallagher, directly, or you can go to Heather Gallagher _cameragirl-Gallagher. You can also check her out on Instagram at cameragirlsf, which is her handle there. And is there anywhere else that they should check out, Heather? Or are those kind of the best places to touch base with you?
I've been doing some writing, so it's cameragirl@.medium.com, I believe, is a place. So I wrote a lot about the Burning Man virtual worlds as that they were happening. So if folks are interested in that, there's some funny stories and some insights onto that experience, and that's another way folks can reach out to me as well.
That's awesome. To all of you too, you know, we've been kind of going through this every week. We have our website or Patreon page, Be Our Hero. If you guys have anything to donate to help us keep this thing moving forward, that would be awesome. It could even be the smallest little thing through there as a one-time. It'd be really great to have your support and help kind of keep this train on the tracks and rolling forward. We also have, of course, the swag area on the website with shirts and cups and all kinds of stuff like that. Next week, we're going to have my friend Jeff Grants on the show. He's an amazing person. He's done a lot of different talks, actually been on some of the TEDx stuff. And he's the director of creative technologies at DCL Boston, who fabricates some incredible things. Did a lot of work as well in the Hard Rock Hotel down in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. So check that out next week. And Heather, thank you so much once again for joining me today. It's been amazing having you on board.
It's been a lot of fun, Geoffrey. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And to all of you, you know, as I say every single week, time and time again, stay ahead of the curve, everyone. Take care.